Is SnowRunner on Xbox finally getting fixed? Well, maybe, sort of, kind of. We're going to talk about everything that means in this video, so make sure you stick around for the rest of the details. Now, this document was published today by Saber Support, and it says SnowRunner known issues, and it lists off multiple different issues that the community has been talking about for quite a while now. Like, for example, players on Xbox may experience crashing while playing in co-op, the game may crash unexpectedly on Xbox platforms, issues with the Logitech G923 force feedback, and rail sections disappearing or essentially being disrupted during a contract, as well as various visual glitches with the terrain on the PC version of the game. And all of these are listed as yellow, which in their particular color coding system means working on a fix. And now multiple people on Twitter or X actually replied to this post and said, oh, so you seriously found, or figured out why the crashing issue on Xbox was happening? And they said, yes, our team is currently addressing the above-mentioned problem. So that actually is pretty positive sounding, because that kind of means, at least to me, what I read that as is we know why the issue is happening, for one, and we are also currently working on a fix. However, let me know in the comments section down below if you think this is still a little too vague, or if you would have liked maybe more detail on why that issue is happening, because frankly, it has been an issue that has plagued this game for such a long time, and frankly, I believe more than half a year at this point. Now, I did make another video not too long ago talking about a few different issues that were going on in SnowRunner that the community was talking about, as well as things that I was personally experiencing. And there were a couple of people in the comments that essentially said things like, well, you don't develop these games, so why are you complaining about them? Why are you complaining about these issues that you can't do anything to fix? And I'm like, here's the thing. We should be allowed to critique a game that we love. And if you think there's an issue with critiquing a game that we love, especially if it, if it constitutes pointing out things that are technically wrong with the game itself, I feel like that's a really strange standpoint to have. It's like, hey, there's an issue going on in this game and I want to bring it to light and talk about it. And then if you respond to that with no, you're not a dev, shut up, that literally doesn't help anyone in this game's community. However, I think that would require some people to be able to determine where the line is between someone that is genuinely bringing concerns to light versus someone that is just complaining about the game. Like, for example, if someone was just quote-unquote complaining about the game, they would just say the game is bad, whereas someone trying to bring light to actual issues that the game is having, they would list out things that are actually going wrong, which is what the community has been doing. And that, in my view, isn't necessarily complaining. That's just wanting to make a game that you enjoy play a little better, or at least in SnowRunner's case, actually make multiplayer on Xbox somewhat usable. And I do think, of course, as time goes on, these issues will get worked out, because we do know that SnowRunner is going to continue to live on, at least for the foreseeable future. However, I do have a little bit of a concern, and my concern is that when these issues first arose and when these issues first started becoming extremely prevalent, I worry that there were a lot of people that got so turned off by these issues that they kind of left the game altogether. And especially if you're someone that used to play SnowRunner a lot but doesn't play it all that much, or really doesn't play it at all anymore, let me know in the comment section down below if getting all of these issues on Xbox fixed would bring you back to the game, or if it would be not quite enough and happening a little bit too late. Because I think in the grand scheme of things, it is pretty wild to me that these are happening, over half a year after these issues arose, and also after the releases of multiple DLCs and patches, with an issue still lingering in the game that was essentially, for Xbox players, game-breaking. Because if you think about it, Xbox is one of the largest user bases for SnowRunner, or at least it was for the game's kind of initial year of its lifespan. And I think when you ignore an issue for so long that has been hurting such a large portion of your player base, they're not necessarily going to be all that happy with you. So now, granted, I know that there's been a lot of things that have been going on at, say, for example, Saber, they work on a lot more than SnowRunner, right? I completely understand that they have a lot more on their plate than just SnowRunner. And I'm also sure that there's been like a lot of different things that have gone on in the world that may have segmented parts of the team and parts of the studios. But even still, we've still gotten a steady stream of content for the game. And when you're getting a steady stream of content, I feel like you should also be getting a steady stream of fixes. And the effects of the Xbox issues are kind of something that I've even seen the effects of here on my channel, because I used to get a lot more questions about mods and maps and various gameplay questions from Xbox players. But at the height of the Xbox gameplay issues, I started to get a lot more interaction from PlayStation users, because a lot of the Xbox people, at least a lot of the Xbox people that watched me, kind of seemed like they abandoned the game and thus kind of weren't as interested in watching SnowRunner content, because I don't know if it reminded them of the fact that they couldn't really play the game at the moment, or maybe as the game became less and less playable to them, their interest may have dropped, which again is not surprising. And I wouldn't blame anybody for that. It's just a very interesting observation to be able to have. Now, none of this is to say, though, that the devs have not patched anything, in SnowRunner in recent memory, because they've actually patched a lot of stuff. And as a matter of fact, if we look at some of the most recent patch notes, they fixed a lot of different things in the Kenworth 963. They fixed some Yukon region bugs, some British Columbia region bugs, and some other improvements kind of across the board with trucks like the ZIKZ Mastodon. And they also adjusted the crane weight of the LK2NY crane. They fixed all Tatras now being available for purchase in the new region. And they even went as deep as to fixing and updating some things in the map editor, which is going to be a big help for anybody really that creates mods or maps for any system. Now, I will say, and I want to make this entirely clear, I have nothing against what they are doing with SnowRunner as a whole. I think they're still providing a lot of support for their community. I just wish that there were some directional things that they would adjust that would maybe help their community understand where the game is going a little bit easier, because I think they really do deal with such a big issue where they try to be communicative, but the point doesn't always get across, and then it gets misinterpreted, and then people get upset, and then they end up getting frustrated with the game, or they move on to other games, and it doesn't end up playing out all that well in the long run. And honestly, that can have a lot of wacky issues, because it can turn into this strange game of like back and forth, almost telephone, where it's like, well, the devs said this, and then someone else interprets it as this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then the original message is kind of gone. But what that kind of brings me back around to is I think there needs to be, at the very least, a little bit of a priority adjustment in terms of fixes and getting certain fixes out quicker. Like, for example, once again, the Xbox co-op fix, because we've got so many of these other fixes, but not necessarily the biggest fix that the game has needed for quite a long time. I mean, I would be willing to maybe forego a couple of little fixes here and there in order to get the Xbox fix, like the Xbox co-op fix, a little bit sooner. Now, granted, I know that not everybody plays on Xbox, but even still, I think it's worth leaning into that, because it's such a important part of the game's community that leaving it kind of out in the open for so long could again have detrimental effects to the game and its community and its longevity. And I know I've talked at length about this topic at this point, but I do want to hear from y'all in the comments down below if you have any particular insights that you would like to share in regards to really any of these issues, because at the end of the day, I mean, the Xbox issues, while they are very, very, very important, there could be other user bases that don't necessarily care about them, like, for example, PlayStation users and Switch users. But with all of that being said and done, I hope y'all enjoyed this SnowRunner update video, and I will see y'all in the next one. Talk to y'all later.